Hey, Nick. This is weird. That's worked out really well.
I know. I was going to say that if you're going to replace Nick with anyone, you should replace Nick with another Nick.
Well, welcome to Tys and Videotape, everybody. Today we are without Nicholas. Nicholas has had a baby emergency, as one does when they have a very small child. But we have managed to replace him for today's episode with another Nick.
Hi.
We have a very good friend of the podcast, Nicole. Welcome, Nicole.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Well,
Pumped to be talking Hellraiser?
Maybe. We'll see. Once we get into it, we'll see how it goes.
Indeed. Well, this is Tys and Videotape for another week. We're entering our October Spook-isodes, which I'm very excited about. We are spending the whole month talking all things horror and scariness, which isn't really my bag.
And it's really not
it's
my
not
bag
Nicole's either. We're probably the two worst people to be talking about horror movies. I love the idea of horror movies. I just don't tend to watch many of them.
I love to read synopsis of horror movies.
Yes.
I hate watching horror movies, but I really, really, really love knowing what happens.
I have seen you do this.
Yeah.
I've seen your sisters do this. This is...
But
yes.
I know I'm not spoiling it because I never want to watch them.
So you're never going to watch that movie. You can just read about it on Wikipedia. Very good. But this month, yes, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of exciting things, starting this episode with, of course, our little chat about 1987's Hellraiser, directed by Clive Barker. And we'll be telling you all about next week's exciting things as we get to the end of the show. But before we do any of that nonsense, you can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, anywhere you find your podcasts.
YouTube.
If you search us, you can find us. YouTube now. I've been doing a fuck ton of work on that YouTube channel, and we got about 20-something views, so it's coming along swimmingly. The hour to view ratio is not quite where my hours work to view ratio is not quite where I would like it to be just yet.
But that's going to work for all the people who don't really know how to work out their podcast apps on their phones.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if it's just me, but the new Apple Podcast app update. Do you have a iPhone?
No, I haven't updated.
I updated, and it's no good. It's real hard to use. So YouTube might end up getting much more action than usual. You can also find us on Facebook, on Twitter. We're doing a heap of fun stuff through Halloween, through October. So jump on, tell us what your scary movies you've seen, tell us what you recommend, what you don't, and we're going to be doing the same thing. You're going to be able to hear all about the scary movies that Nick and I, and anyone else that we who frequent our podcast will be watching. Nicole.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's very exciting to have you here.
I'm
bit of a late
big fan.
You are a big fan.
Yes.
Nicole is actual fan of the podcast. We have had some correspondence from Nicole before, and also an episode based on a suggestion from Nicole. So it was a bit of a no-brainer when I was thinking about how can I get someone in here very quickly. Super fan, Nicole. So yes, welcome very much. We're very happy to have you here. I'm very happy to have you here. Nicole.
Yes.
I feel really weird calling you Nicole, so I'm going to go back to calling you Nick.
Yeah.
Which may confuse some listeners. But
hopefully my feminine voice and my lack of an insane laugh distinguishes me from the male
Well,
Nick.
we'll see. We'll see if we can get some kind of laugh happening. Why don't you tell us a little bit, as I have with all my guests that I have on the show, tell us a little bit about how you came to love movies.
Okay, so I was one of those blessed childs is
the word you're after. There.
Who had access to cable very, very early on. So mum and dad, way back when.
Optus
Yes,
Vision.
Optus.
Was that the first one in Australia?
I don't even know if it was called Optus Vision. It was just Optus. It was a little box and it had things like the Cartoon Network, which was my personal favourite, and movie channels, and that was amazing. So we would get home. Well, my sisters and I would get home from school, finish our homework because we were good kids, call my mum up and ask if we could watch TV.
That's amazingly well trained.
Yeah. And then watch as many movies as we wanted. And my dad is a really big fan of anything that is given a really good review.
I have seen your father's DVD collection. It is extensive and lots of unopened as well.
Yeah, he tends to watch. Well, we had Optus, and then we moved to Foxtel, and then they kind of merged, and all of the channels were on Foxtel anyway. And
of course.
So we've always had access to the movie channels, and my parents were very big on us watching whatever we wanted. And I remember one of the funniest movies that the funniest situations we were in was we all loved The Terminator, the three of us. and we had a VHS copy, and I always remember watching it because it had the Burger Rings ad where the Burger Ring packet chases the guy's hand away when he tries to steal it.
Yes, I remember that ad.
Yeah, so good old VHS with the amazing ads.
Yeah.
And the chippy.
Yep.
And also the echidna with the ants.
Yes.
Those ads, classic ads.
Classic Australian ads.
So we have this VHS copy of The Terminator, and I'm talking about when we were probably, I was maybe 8 or 10.
Yep.
So really not of the appropriate age.
I'd say that's about the same age. Most people end up probably watching the first Terminator. I reckon I was around that same age.
There's a pretty full-on sex scene, like, in the end.
Yes, of course there is.
And so we used to take the VHS.
With the slow saxophone and all the,
with
the glaze on the lens and everything. You went full bloody...
Because the version we
soap opera.
had was rated AO, adults only, way back when.
Yeah, way back when.
So we used to take that to my nana's house, my nana and pop's house, when they were looking after us, and we'd have to time it really well so that we could fast forward the rating at the start, and obviously never have the sex scene on screen when my nana or pop walked into the room.
Yeah. You've basically explained, I think, the childhood of many a movie fan is how can I, for one, lie about the rating of the film that I'm watching. No, it's PG, Mum, I swear to God.
Totally
and
fine.
how do you, because parents have amazing intuition to walk in
whenever there's
a sex scene.
Oh, it's so awkward.
What are you watching? Which is very familiar, I'm sure, to many of us. Nicole,
yes.
Nick, we're going to talk some trailers.
Everybody's talking trailers.
Very good. So,
is that where the thing goes?
that's where the thing goes.
That's where the thing goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And we don't. It's fine. It doesn't happen live. I do it later. Very good. Why don't you go first?
Okay.
What trailer did you watch, Nick?
I watched Isle of Dogs.
I did also see this trailer. Isle of Dogs.
So Wes Anderson's newest movie.
It is.
So I didn't notice that right from the start. It was just Isle of Dogs, and I am a dog lover, and I was like, "Yep, great, I'll watch that."
Sure.
And then I saw it was Wes Anderson, and one of the movies that I saw recently that I remember the most is Grand Budapest Hotel.
Oh yes.
And this trailer reminds me of that movie so much. Just the visuals. So some of the scenes where in Grand Budapest Hotel where he would pull back and you would see almost the puppet silhouettes showing a chase scene.
Oh yeah.
So the visual style of what you can see in this trailer is pretty much the same as that. So the movie, from what I can gather, is that there's an overpopulation of dogs in Japan, and they've all been sent into exile onto a garbage island after there was a dog flu. And then a young boy is going to the garbage island in search of his dog Spots. But that's what you think is happening because he speaks Japanese and the dogs speak English and there's no subtitles.
Yeah.
So
it's a really interesting setting for this because already the concept is kind of interesting. It's just, it's Fantastic Mr. Fox but with dogs.
Yeah.
And so we've already got kind of like something I'm ready to see. And then this little extra bit where it's kind of we're not only going to have a communication kind of breakdown between, dogs and humans, because you'd see that usually where it's like, yes, everyone's talking English, but nobody understands each other. Yeah. We're also getting the extra level of now we need dogs that happen to speak Japanese as well.
Or maybe it's just part of that, like...
Because are there dogs? There are dogs in it that speak Japanese, I believe.
I didn't see any.
No?
I just saw the one...
okay.
You know what? I probably wasn't paying close enough attention because it looked amazing.
It did look amazing. And look, I've come to expect nothing but from Wes Anderson at the moment. I just think, he's one of those guys that I'm always going to watch what he brings out no matter what. Funnily enough, Fantastic Mr. Fox is the one of his films that I have not seen.
I haven't seen that either.
And I don't know, it's just always been, I don't know why I have this aversion to puppets. I have a little bit of a kind of... it's not
like stop motion puppets I'm not really comfortable with, but...
I don't know why. Well, maybe it's... I don't know. I don't watch a lot of kids' films, just generally. I think I usually watch what is kind of what's popular and what's really kind of, everyone's saying, oh, you have to see this. That'll drive me to see a kid's film. I don't just tend to just go, we'll just chuck that on and see what happens. Having said that, I kind of missed Fantastic Mr. Fox. I came to it a bit late after everyone. I kind of didn't really get on the Wes Anderson train until a little bit after that one.
And I'm a fan, but not like a movie buff fan would be in the sense that you must see every single Wes Anderson movie that's been released. I tend to just come across them because they've got actors in them that I want to see in movies. Yeah. Because you have to be in they're beautiful movies all the time, but you have to be in the right frame of mind because they're so distinct.
Yeah.
And you have to be prepared to absorb what
Yeah,
he's
well, I
trying
feel
to
like it's the kind of
give you.
that frame of mind, though. Even if you're not in that frame of mind, I feel like they're the kind of movies that, like, if you sat down in a bad mood, within 10 minutes you'd be in a good mood. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that's the power that he has of that. I think it's just even when for instance, like if the premise of the film interests me in no way, which generally most of his films don't. Like, as far as the premise actually goes, if I read it on a piece of paper, I would say, I don't need to see that movie. But
Like Royal Tenenbaums.
yeah, it's just a dysfunctional family drama. I'm like, yeah, cool, dime a dozen. But when you start watching one that he's done, a movie that he's made, within 10 minutes you seem to be really engaged in this story that you didn't think you'd give a rat's ass about.
Yeah.
And so now when he has something that I'm very much engaged in, I am very excited because, yes, we are animal lovers. And so a bunch of dogs running around with Wes Anderson's kind of sense of humour and his uncanny knack to make you care about characters that you don't think you would care about. I'm very excited for this film. I think it's going to be wonderful.
I think my favourite thing that I just noticed in the background was the fact that the dogs keep on sneezing.
Yes, I actually noticed that, yeah.
Just because it's adorable, but also because, I guess, of where they are. But it was one of those things that you just, like, in his movies, the background noise is amazing.
There's nothing. Everything is deliberate.
Yes.
It's never accidental what ends up in one of his films. I'm very keen for this. I think this is going to be very cool.
And one other thing I just wanted to say about it was my favourite thing, because I watched a few other trailers and they were really starting to piss me off.
Sure.
And the thing I really liked about this was that it gave you enough information, but not so much that I had no idea what potentially could happen. I'm not trying to guess what's going to happen because it's Wes Anderson and it could really end up in any direction.
It could go. There's no point trying to guess.
Yeah, but I watched the trailer right before this. It went for half the time, and they just, like, if you had no idea what that movie is from a franchise, where that movie was from, like,
what movie is this? You can tell. You're not going to not hurt someone's feelings.
The Maze Runner.
The Maze Runner.
Death Cure. I've read the books.
Yes.
And it just drove me crazy because if I hadn't read the books, it just looks like a mess full of action and things blowing up and kids.
Yeah,
and
well,
walls
I assume that's kind of. I think that was designed to just be very much a teaser, but I didn't get anything. I was trying to figure out because I've seen the first one.
The first one's good.
The first movie.
Well, the premise of the first movie is good.
I agree. Yes, I was intrigued enough by the premise that I did a U and went and read the Wikipedia page.
And then what did you think?
So that I could learn about the rest of the story. I was disappointed by that they couldn't kind of. They had a really good concept, which I think is the first film, and then because it was so successful, they had to try and extend it further, and they kind of had nowhere to go because spoilers for the Maze Runner, they'd gotten out at the end of the first one, and then they were kind of left with, essentially, now we're just going to do a kind of Hunger Gamesy kind of thing, where it's, again, going against the establishment, or like, what's the other one? That fucking Divergent or whatever.
Okay. So we're getting off
kind of shit.
We're getting off topic, but that's young adult action dystopian franchise turned into movies, but based off books that don't have completely thought out start to finish overall concepts, drives me crazy.
So when the movies are made before all the books are written?
Well, when the books are written to get a movie deal.
Oh, so you feel like that there's a little bit of a shiftiness going on in young adult writers at the moment, where they're very aware that this could result in a movie deal?
Yeah.
How very dare they?
Especially because half of them have such amazing concepts, but then they're like the first idea is brilliant, and then they can't close the idea properly.
But that's so many ideas. That's like I get what you're saying. I don't disagree.
But then don't have a three
everything.
But don't have a three book deal. Just write one book that doesn't have a. Do you know what?
Finish. And this is what everyone says about movies. Instead of worrying about the universe and your sequel, just make one good movie first, and then we'll see what happens. I'm with you there. The Maze Runner trailer was also kind of disappointing. So,
yes, but Isle of Dogs looks beautiful.
It does. All right, well, I'm going to talk about, I saw a trailer for, I'm all about the Netflix originals at the moment. I really, maybe it's just that they know how to make a really good trailer, because I don't, like, they've been good movies, some of these Netflix originals.
I'm hitting the mic.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Calm your shit down. The they haven't always, the trailers have sometimes been better than the end result. I will say that. But what I want to talk about in the spirit of Halloween Spook-isodes is I saw a trailer for a film called The Babysitter. I find it kind of worth mentioning because it's directed by Mick G, who has brought us such classics as the Charlie's Angels films and Terminator Salvation, and for a little while was meant to be doing a Superman, and then that thankfully didn't.
Is Salvation the one with
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If it's the one, you have to ask because it's not the one that makes it's not one of the normal ones, and it's not the newest one.
I'm pretty sure I have that on DVD.
Oh yeah, I have it on DVD. Don't worry about that. I went and purchased it recently because I was in a completist mood.
Yeah, that movie. Yep.
I needed to watch it, and I watched it again, and it was no good. But this actually looks like Mick G could be doing something good. Do you remember those old Charlie's Angels films?
I do. I have. Well, this is a problem with Foxtel. Like all of these sorts of movies, I've seen many times.
Yeah. I think
First and
that first
second.
one, the second one is, I've seen the much less because I just remember not enjoying it very much. I still love that first Charlie's Angels movie. And I have not watched it in probably 10 years, but I loved it sick. Like, I thought it was really kind of this specific energy that only existed in like the early 2000s in movies. Like everything was all really high energy and super fun, and all the wire work and kind of tongue in cheek at the same time. But
it was like you were allowed to. It's not making fun of it, but making it more fun because it was girls.
Yeah. For sure.
So it just made it so much easier for people to just for the energy to be higher, and let's break out into like random dancing in the undies.
Yeah,
At the mail
that was it, wasn't it? That was the first
something
scene.
funny would happen, and you're allowed to squeal with each other, and that sort of ups the energy, and so
and
much fun.
Crispin Glover's a weird creep.
So weird.
So weird. So this might, I can't say I've enjoyed a Mick G film since. But this looks really funny. I think it's going to be really fun. Just like really quickly, it's just a story about a young boy who has a babysitter that he has a crush on. And she invites some of her friends over one night while she's babysitting. And he's spying on them, playing like a truth or dare kind of game. And as he is spying on them, his babysitter stabs somebody in the head and blood gushes everywhere. And it turns out that her and her friends are going to be performing some kind of satanic ritual. And they need the blood of an innocent, and that is him. It sounds kind of morbid, but they're playing it really for laughs, like really funny. It's kind of like a Glee kind of style sense of humor injected into a horror film, which, while that might sound really kind of off-putting to a lot of people, you got to remember some of the like that early energy of Glee was really great. The first couple of episodes, like first 10 or so episodes, there was a really distinctive energy and it worked really well. Maybe think more kind of like Pitch Perfect, but if it was a horror film.
And it does help that there is someone from Pitch Perfect in the cast.
Who's that?
The Asian lady.
The one, yes, the crazy one.
So
what's her deal in Pitch Perfect again? She just hears.
You can't hear her. She's so soft.
Yes, of course.
The music in this trailer, Tainted Love.
Yes.
Like in the way they use that music with the horror action that they show you like some little snippets of.
Yeah.
Makes it so much fun.
It works really, yeah.
It's a hyped up version of Tainted Love, it sounds like.
Yeah, well,
it's got a bit of oomph to it.
They've rocked it out a little bit more. And it's really like, they've really sold the tone really well. Like, we know exactly what we're going to get if we watch this film. It's going to be like bloody, but really fun. But not in a parody kind of way.
Yeah.
Like we're not talking scary movie. We're talking like
The Duff.
The Duff. But if they were all killing each other.
Yeah.
Really like a kind of speaking of The Duff, we've got the guy from the main guy from The Duff
and the girl.
Oh, is she in it too?
Sorry, the I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't watched the trailer.
No, that's fine.
The redhead, the cheerleadery type one.
Yeah, isn't she?
She's in The Duff. She's the one that films herself all the time.
But this looks really fun. I'm really excited for this. And like all Netflix originals, you can watch it from the comfort of your home. I am always up for that. That makes me very happy. And in the spirit of kind of Halloweenness, I think that would be a good little kind of entry point for maybe some lesser kind of prepared people who don't want to have to sit through something harrowing and, dismal, depressing and, make you want to have a shower afterwards for Halloween. Like you can celebrate Halloween in other ways. It's kind of like, I know a lot of people that would watch Shaun of the Dead to celebrate Halloween instead of,
I'm one of those people.
Night of the Living Dead.
Never.
Yeah, exactly. And so this looks like it could be one of those movies that will kind of cater to that side, the people that aren't super, super into scary films but want to watch something fun and gory and gross and kind of scary for Halloween.
But not like gory.
It looks like it's going to be pretty gory.
I mean, like blood splattering gory, but not like insides gory.
Oh, no.
That's an important distinction.
That's your distinction?
Yep.
If you see the insides of people, then it's fine. It's like, that's it. I'm out. Checking out. Well, very good. I think that'll do us for trailer talk. Talking trailers, whatever we call it. Hey, Nick.
Yes.
What did you watch this week?
So,
Boom, boom.
so one of my favorite Sylvester Stallone movies.
Yes.
So I'm a huge action movie fan.
Yes.
The action genre is probably my most favorite, and Sylvester Stallone is in many of my most favorite action movies. All of the Rambos, pretty much. I'm probably one of those rare people who maybe likes Rambo more than Rocky, and I think that's more because I like action movies more than like movies.
Sport. Movies. What are these movies you speak of?
Like Rocky's like, I know the first Rambo is kind of considered the same, but Rocky's considered.
Yeah, first Rambo is really depressing.
Yeah. It's, yeah.
Yeah,
and
First
then,
Blood.
And then
that's a real movie.
Yeah. It's a movie.
Yeah, I get you. I'm with you now.
And then 2 and 3 are just like fun. Well, also kind of depressing too, but fun. And then 4 is insane.
4 is insane.
But yeah, so off topic.
No, but it's funny though. Speaking of insides in that movie, like,
oh my god,
you see so many insides of people.
But in a way
Burmese soldiers, they're just basically all their intestines just falling out.
But in a way that I appreciate, because not many movies show what actually happens to you if you get shot with a machine gun.
Well, if you had a minigun on the back of a army truck and
it's a machine gun that needs to be bolted down.
Yeah.
And you shot someone close range.
They're
going to explode.
Soup.
Yeah,
is the result, I think. Human
but also
soup.
like when you like I know that Rambo was trying to be more like the first one, like more real.
Yeah, I think more real in big air quotes. Yeah, real issues, but like also fucking out of control, over the top violence.
Because it's Rambo, but
Rambo.
It's so strange. I hate that in horror movies. I can't handle that sort of blood and gore in a horror movie. But if it's Rambo shooting people up, I'm like, yeah. It's the best.
What does that say about you, Nick?
I don't know.
We got some problems here.
Anyway, so the best Sylvester Stallone movie.
The best?
No.
Are you about to call this movie the best Sylvester Stallone movie?
Of its type.
Okay.
So,
right. We'll talk about its type in a second.
And that is 1996's amazing Sylvester Stallone movie, Daylight. Yes. So
you sent me a photo of this. Did you buy this? Is that why you have the photo of this?
You guys were talking about how Can't Hardly Wait was on your high rotation video hire.
Oh, yeah.
Daylight for me.
Sure.
Was like, yep, let's just get
That's
that.
funny.
It'll fill it out.
Daylight is not on mine at all. I've seen it once when I was like 15. Maybe even a little younger, and I have never seen it since. It would practically be a brand new film to me if I watched it again.
And I would really, really be interested to know what you thought of it if you watched it again.
I'll borrow your Blu-ray.
Because it doesn't stand up.
Really?
Well, it doesn't stand up. See, okay, so when I say it's the best Sylvester Stallone movie of its type, like it is, it's out of control. Like,
as in the type, as in...
So, wait, for anyone who doesn't know, Daylight is about... an explosion that caves in the tunnel that goes under, I don't know, the Hudson River?
One of
the American rivers.
Yes, one of them rivers.
Where there's a big traffic tunnel and there's an explosion and lots of people die, but there's a few survivors and they have to escape. And so we've got the double whammy of being trapped in a tunnel, but also that tunnel is underwater. There's also fire in the tunnel and flooding. And
yes.
Yeah, and...
yes, it's coming. I'm remembering parts of this.
And my favourite thing about this movie, so this is one of the Sylvester Stallone movies where he is technically a civilian,
right?
But he's the only one who can save the people.
Of course.
So because that's how it works.
Is he a firefighter
No,
or
he's
something?
been fired because he got people killed.
What did he do?
He did in the job with when he used to be on the force.
Maybe I haven't seen this movie. I feel like I'm thinking of something else.
He took a risk and people died, and so he left the force.
So he was a cop though. So he's got.
So this might sound familiar. Cliffhanger. So he he rocks up on the scene and he's like, "No, you can't use the machines because it'll cave the tunnel in and the people will die." And so they work out a way to send one person only down into the tunnel, and that person is Sylvester Stallone, who is a civilian. And he has to save the group of people, the ragtag survivors.
And there's not many of them, is there?
No, there's about 10.
Yeah.
Because everyone, spoilers, most of the people die in a chemical explosion.
Right.
That's because so this is why I say it doesn't hold up. So this crash is caused by some naughty developer people who are transporting toxic waste through the tunnel, which they're not supposed to do. Something like some sort of like barrels that are stamped with the cross and skull bones.
Yes, I know the ones very well.
And and a car full of diamond thieves. They've just stolen a suitcase of diamonds off this guy, and they're in his BMW and they're speeding through the tunnel and they're looking at the diamonds, and then the diamonds spill and they try to get them, and then they crash into the back of the trucks, and the trucks explode and kill everyone.
That is a convoluted
and these thieves, they're just
so they all die.
They all die. Yes,
I have not seen this movie.
They look like
this is all new information.
They look like they're punk rockers from the 80s.
Yes.
And it's just sort of like, what? They look so out of place. So seeing that, you kind of like, but I love the rest of the movie. It's got surprise Viggo Mortensen in it.
Oh, yes. I love early Viggo stuff. Yep. My favorite early Viggo is in another horror movie, so you probably wouldn't have seen this. The Prophecy? Do you know this? So The Prophecy is this series of films where Christopher Walken plays the Archangel.
I have seen this.
Gabriel, maybe? And it's towards the end of that film, Viggo comes down as the devil.
Yes, I have seen that. Yeah. Are they in a cave at some point?
Yeah. They're like a hill with a cave kind of opening. I don't think they're in the cave. But yeah.
I've definitely seen at least the end of that. Because
and that's like 1997 when Viggo was noble. Like no one knew who Viggo was. And he comes out and he's awesome. Nice. And I remember just being like, surprise Viggo. This is the best.
And he's great in this because this is he's like the souped up famous person who's like, I can save the people, but of course he's doing the wrong thing because Sylvester Stallone says no.
Oh dear, gone are those days.
So it's just it's so much fun.
So 97, did 96. You say 96? So 96.
So the effects are.
He was starting to kind of be the end of the Stallone.
Yeah, he looks older. Yeah. So the veins are starting to pop out a little bit. But
I think Copland was 97 or 98.
Yeah.
So yeah, Daylight was right in the kind of no one gives a fuck anymore.
And I'm pretty sure no one gave a fuck about it. I don't know how well it did, but I think it would have done as well as any sort of these action movies that sort of belong in the 80s but came out in the 90s.
Yes, that's a very good description of them.
It's you know what? It's a movie that I can just put on and it's there and it's fun and I know exactly what's going to happen and it doesn't matter how many times I watch it. So I was very sad because you couldn't get this on DVD.
By
the time I reconnected to it, I wanted to buy it on DVD and I couldn't find it anywhere.
I remember it was on DVD at a time.
And it went out of print very quickly.
Usually, things like that when they go out of print, you'd wait for like one of the other smaller distribution companies to pick it up and sell it cheap, but it just never happened.
And ever since I mentioned that to you, I think it's been on TV on a random night of the week, maybe 3 times in the last few years, including maybe 2 weeks ago it was on TV. And I was just doing a JB, just like browse. Filling out, I've just bought a Blu-ray player. I've upgraded, so I'm slowly rebuying all my
I just got a Blu-ray player. It's very exciting. No, you have a good reason.
Yeah, and I was buying some Captain America, as you do,
of course.
And I was just browsing, and I happened to look. I couldn't find all of them, and so I was just walking through, and I looked down, and there was Daylight, and I was like, "Holy shit, it's on Blu-ray!"
It would have been cheap too, I would imagine.
It was like $12.
$12. Even that's a bit steep, actually. I would have thinking at least $9.98. But any special features? Anything good? This is like a Blu-ray review now. They might send us a free copy.
I'm pretty sure it's literally just the movie.
Oh, I hate it when they do that.
It's like what they used to do for DVDs. They're like the $5 DVDs. Yeah, here is the movie from the VHS on a disc.
Exactly.
I don't really care.
If it's in widescreen, you're lucked out. Chances are it's not.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this. Yeah. It looked okay on my TV. I'm not sure how it will do on anything that's too big, but I think.
Directed by Rob Cohen.
You have more information than I do.
Of Fast and Furious fame.
Actually, yes, I did know that because that was on the DVD case. On the Blu-ray case.
Rob Cohen is notoriously not a great. I'm trying to think. Like, he's one of those guys that like has made so many movies, and there's a few in there that people love almost just by happenstance that he directed them. Like Dragonheart is another one. Oh my god,
and I love Dragonheart.
And this is it.
Dragonheart is one. I have the soundtrack to Dragonheart, and I listen to that shit all the time. It's in my mellow work mix.
What?
It's very uplifting. The finale of Dragonheart, where he becomes one of the stars.
Okay.
You guys should definitely do a podcast on Dragonheart. Sean Connery.
Sure. Yeah.
Dennis Quaid.
I am the last one.
And Dennis Quaid.
I love Dennis Quaid. I'll happily watch Dennis Quaid.
But I'm going to say, like, if people like Demolition Man, they would probably like Daylight. It's got the same sort of. Sorry. Demolition Man is a lot more fun, crazy fun. But if you watch Daylight from that sort of point of view, I think you'd have a lot of fun. I love it.
Very good. All right. Well, I'm a bit slow with my horror movie starting. it's the 5th of October today, so just not giving too much away. And I've only seen 2 horror movies so far. I'm going to up my ante very shortly. Started with a kind of an interesting choice. It's because I saw it and thought maybe this would be easily digestible because it was late and I didn't want to watch anything too intense. I watched Jennifer's Body from 2008.
With Megan Fox?
With Megan Fox. 2008. Let's double check that. And written by 2009. Diablo Cody, who wrote Juno and Young Adult. And then also directed by Karen Kasima. I've forgotten how to say her name. Who has kind of come to the forefront recently. Karen Kusama, for directing The Invitation, which was a lot of people's favorite film from a couple of years ago, favorite horror film from a couple of years ago. It's an interesting movie. Have you seen this film?
I haven't, but I'm pretty sure at some point I've read the synopsis on Wikipedia.
I'm sure. It's funny. It's got a really interesting tone. I don't know if it handles its tone effectively all the way through. It kind of plays for that kind of intense horror, but also cutesy teen comedy thing that I'm hoping that this babysitter movie actually pulls off well.
And did this come out right after she'd been cut from Transformers?
Not sure, but she definitely had a reputation at this point as being the Megan Fox.
Yeah.
And I actually think she's really quite good in it. She's really strong. I've never really seen Megan Fox be bad in anything. I don't know how she got this reputation of not being a good performer. Because she's got an excellent screen presence, and like she has fuck all to do in those Terminator, those fucking.
I think she's
robots
got,
in disguise.
Transformers.
Thank you.
She got the reputation because of probably how she was shot in those movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Where,
and that's that's Michael Bay's fault.
If your opening scene of a movie is draped over a motorcycle, painting a picture on it in not much, and you look as banging as she does, then
well, Michael Bay has yet to find a butt that he can't stick a camera as close to as possible. But I think she's got a really nice screen presence, and I've seen her in a bunch of stuff, like even something like This Is 40, where she's just playing a version of a hot young girl who a 40-year-old woman is jealous of because she's hot and young. She just does that really naturally and really easy, and she never comes across as like a bad person.
So have you seen? I'm going to throw this, probably, I can't even remember the name of the movie. It's one with Cameron Diaz when she's with a guy and realizes that it's the other woman?
Other woman,
yeah. So what you're describing kind of reminds me of Katie Upton's character in that movie.
Yeah, Katie Upton, yeah.
Yeah. Is it Katie or Kate? I have no idea. Let's say Katie.
Sure.
My friend Katie.
My best is.
And where it's like this like young, absolutely gorgeous woman, and in any other movie or someone with any other abilities would just play it as like, I'm the hot bitch.
Yeah.
And I never get that with
well, actually,
Megan Fox either.
that movie that's not a great movie, but that was one thing I actually liked about that film, is that they never made her like a villain.
Yeah.
Like they actually kind of embraced that just because she's young and hot and your husband is sleeping with her doesn't make her the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's what I get from Megan Fox a lot, especially in things like this, where she's like,
she gets to do some really kind of cool stuff in this. She gets to kind of
a zombie.
Yeah, well, so what happens is they go to a bar to see a band play, and this band, fronted by Adam Brody from the OC.
Yes.
Yeah. They are maybe a little bit shifty and are up to something no good. And at the end of the gig, the bar burns down, and during the escape, they grab Megan Fox and convince her to come into their van with them, and then. Later that night, so her best friend is Amanda Seyfried.
Yeah, that one.
From Mean Girls and all that stuff with the giant eyeballs.
And the vibrato.
Yes, exactly. And so Megan Fox goes in the van and she's like, no, don't, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, later that night, Megan Fox arrives back at Amanda Seyfried's house and is like fucked. She's like, there's blood everywhere and she's coughing up all this black goo, and it's revealed gradually as the film goes on that she has become a succubus of some description.
Yep.
And she has to feed on young gentlemen in order to keep her strength and her health. But she maintains her personality though. So it's, even though she has been kind of taken over by a demon, she still is herself. And I think it was kind of fun. It was the scares themselves don't all necessarily work. There was a couple where I was kind of like a little bit kind of, this is a little bit much for 10:30 at night. Maybe I should watch something else. So there's some unsettling moments, but I think what works best about it is the kind of examination of friendship in this film. Like, it's obviously, you know, it's not thinly veiled, the metaphor. It's pretty clear and out there. It's a metaphor for you know, childhood friendships when you go on your separate paths because, you know, your lives have taking different directions. So, you know, they're literally taking different directions in this, and that's, you know, one of those things that it's examining, and I think it does it really nicely and in a really kind of clever way, because they do try to hold their friendship together despite her wanting to eat people. If it
would have been more interesting if Amanda Seyfried's character was the succubus and Megan Fox was the
yeah, potentially. I think there's probably something there because they do kind of Amanda Seyfried's character, I can't remember her name now. They do kind of, she is incredibly nerdy, like they really they amp it up. She's all cardigans and big dorky glasses and stuff, and so they make no bones about that, which, you know, is
at least they're being upfront about it.
Yeah, and I think, look, the whole movie deals in cliches in that regard. They're not trying to present a complicated view of teenage high schools. They're presenting it very clearly and stereotypically. There's some really fun performances. Like I said, Megan Fox is really great in it. J.K. Simmons shows up as a really kind of like obliviously sweet teacher who, like, you know, one of those teachers that's
I'm happy for him to appear in any movie.
Yeah, and look, he's great. He gets there's a genuine like laugh out loud moment based on him in a sight gag involving him.
My first experience with him was watching Oz.
Oh yeah, he's terrifying.
So to say that I'm happy to see him in any movie.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Oh, excuse me. And while it doesn't stick the landing, that's for sure. But there's some nice ideas in it, and it could have started. I could have done a lot worse for my first horror movie of October. So that is, you can watch that. I think I was on Netflix or something. So if you haven't seen it, it's probably worth giving it a go. If for nothing else, Diablo Cody has a way with dialogue. She's, it's very. I know it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. I know a lot of people that think Juno is unwatchable because of how kind of cutesy indie it is in its dialogue, but I find
I would say that's kind of a better representation. Blah, blah, blah. The words don't come out of my mouth.
Not then.
Better representation of how people sometimes actually talk.
Yeah, I think there's two things. Like, you got to think about friendship groups have the stupidest kind of speaking mannerisms, and I know for like some of my friendship groups, we could have whole conversations with each other and no one would understand a word we're saying because it would be all our. I don't mean like Klingon. It's not that kind of thing. It's just, you know, certain sentences and certain orders of words mean different things to us than it would to other people. So yeah, I get that. I think that there is a bit of truth to it there, but it's also kind of the same way that, you know, it is. Yeah, it's in order to create a certain environment or a heightened reality. She heightens the language. So this kind of heightened tweeness of high school, and she was making, you know, a character like Juno and a character like Michael Cera's character as indie as possible. Yeah. So she's heightened the dialogue. Here it's kind of similar. She's heightened the high schoolness of some of these people.
And the cliches.
Yeah, exactly. And but I think it's pretty effective, and there's some like actual legit like laugh out loud moments. And then, you know, it doesn't all work, but I think it's definitely worth watching. So Jennifer's Body. All right. Hey, we're gonna move on to our feature presentation.
Feature presentation.
Yeah. Right, here we are. Feature presentation. It's our first Spook-isode for October, which I'm very excited about. And, it's an edition of It's on My List. It's on our list. This was on your list. Not at all was it on your list. But, yes.
It may have been on the other Nick's list.
Our famous segment, It's on Our List. This was on our list, and it's HELLRAISER, 1987? Oh, fuck, I've already forgotten what year it came out. Directed by Clive Barker, written by Clive Barker. Clive Barker, notorious, like crazy macabre author. Someone who is a very
1987.
87.
Yep.
Clive Barker's a very interesting personality. Have you ever heard Clive Barker speak?
No.
Okay.
But I have gone on a Wikipedia synopsis exploration of his works.
Right. Yeah. So look, he seems like the typical kind of when you think about people who you're like, wow, you'd be really fucked up in real life, and then they just turned out to be just really nice, normal people.
Yeah.
That's him in 100%.
That's kind of how I imagine like Stephen King to be.
Well, Stephen King is just a lovely dude.
Yeah.
Like very very quick. Like you listen to him have a conversation. It's very.
We are both
he's
Stephen
got
King
ideas.
fans.
Huge Stephen King fans.
Yep.
You're a bigger Stephen King devourer than I am. Because one thing about Nicole is she's an exceptionally fast reader.
Yes.
It's something that I am amazed by.
Yes, I did start reading Stephen King books maybe 8 months ago, and I think I've gone through 6 of them. So
I started reading Stephen King books about I don't know. I would in my teenage years. So that's many, many years, and I've read more than 6, but you're going to catch me at that rate for sure.
Well, I'm on to The Dark Tower now, so the first book of that is very small. So
it is. That's one. Knock it off the list very quickly. I'm currently listening to the audiobook of it.
It does count. Audiobooks.
Yes.
Count as reading.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I agree. And, because I can't read when I'm driving a car, but this way, it's essentially, I get to digest the book the same way.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting because, so Stephen King primarily writes horror.
Yes.
We've already discussed that you are not the greatest horror fan.
No, but books are, so some of Stephen King's really interesting because he touches on subjects that make me more uncomfortable personally, but not from a horror perspective. Like his spiritual things that he touches on in books,
okay.
like The Stand, for example, that made me very uncomfortable, but I didn't ever find it frightening. And I think that's because with a book, it's so much easier to disassociate than if you're watching it on screen. So, I mean, when I read a book, what I visualize happening is the way I want to visualize it happening. So regardless of how gory it is, I don't have to visualize it that way when I'm reading it.
Okay, sure.
And it's interesting with Stephen King was he's not particularly gory. I mean,
no,
maybe, but
every now and it's funny every now and then when you're reading something, and Stephen King has this remarkable ability of you're just casually going on reading a sentence, and then I get to like 3 lines past and go, hang on a second,
yes.
Go 2 lines back, and someone has had their throat ripped out, and it's like,
yes.
Oh, that was sudden. But that's what he does very well is that his violence, it seems, there's no kind of pomp about the gore in his books. They happen very kind of, even like, for instance, we're talking about it, the way he describes
Georgie's arm.
Georgie's arm, yeah.
I think
things
probably
like
the most gory part of that is the leeches.
I don't know if I'm up to the leeches yet.
Oh, okay. Oh, I won't say anything else.
I am, what am I up to? It's probably about halfway through, I would say.
Halfway through child?
No, there's 6 parts.
Yes.
6 parts on YouTube that I'm listening to it
so,
on.
Yeah, no,
and I'm about halfway through part
You're not
2.
up to this part. This is getting closer to when they describe the children going down to the sewers together to destroy it for the first time.
Okay.
You're not up to that yet.
No, I'm not up to that yet. They have yet to... It's still kind of fresh what's occurring to them at the moment.
And look, horror isn't even my book topic of choice. I prefer sci-fi fantasy so much more, but I
think they deal with kind of similar kind of concepts. Like,
my opinion is if it's a good writer, if you write a story well, then it doesn't matter what the genre is. You should be able to enjoy it regardless.
Oh, no, of course.
I've read historical books that are as fascinating as maybe my favourite fantasy books, and then you read something like Lord of the Rings, which is worth reading, but it's really hard for me to revisit because it's too well written almost. Right. That doesn't flow as well. And then books like The Green Mile, which I will definitely read again just because it was beautifully written.
Yeah. Green Mile is I've read the most of Stephen King books because if I ever... the idea of reading Stand again is daunting. Like, I look at the book and I'm like, oh God, I would love to read it again, but it was I think about 8 months of my life.
So I think you need to get an e-reader. So I don't.
No, I love looking at
because I know
want a book in my hand.
So I'm the same with watching movies on Netflix or TV or Foxtel and then buying DVDs and Blu-rays. If I think it's a fantastic movie, I want to buy the Blu-ray or DVD, not because I might want to watch it again, but more because I feel like whoever made that movie deserves to earn money.
Sure.
And books the same way in the sense that they're cheaper on my e-reader, and I feel like I want to give the author more because of the experience they gave me. Because I reread books. There's probably about 50 books I read every year.
Sure.
And then the new books that I add on to that list.
It's madness. It's absolutely madness. But then some people would balk at how many movies that I try to watch in a year. So I guess it's understandable. So let's...
Sorry, back to Clive Barker.
No, well, this is, I think we're both kind of avoiding the topic because...
So I hate horror movies.
That's a strong term, though. Is it? Would you say that you hate it? Because here's the thing. And I want to see if maybe that we share something similar here, is that I don't like being scared.
No.
I don't like the sensation of being scared. But what is interesting, though, to me is that stories that I find the most interesting or characters that I want to be most involved in are usually ones with a kind of, not necessarily a supernatural, but something out of the ordinary. Yeah, which is why I'm also drawn to sci-fi. I'm drawn to fantasy. I'm drawn, and horror.
They're so linked together. Those three.
Yeah, horror kind of ends up walking hand in hand with those two other genres. They just happen to also feature scares.
I think what really turned me off horror, I guess, the way that you think about it now, is that when I was starting to I guess when the type of horror that was the most prevalent in my movie watching years was what you would classify torture porn, and I have no interest in watching people hurt. Not like this is. I love action movies, and I don't mind watching people shoot each other. But I have real problems watching someone torture someone else. I can't. It's something I don't want to see.
Yeah, action movies rarely. When the violence is very visceral and realistic, action movies very rarely kind of take a sadomasochistic kind of joy out of it. That's
exactly what it is. That probably disturbs me from horror movies. But the thing is, the Green Room. So I walked in to you guys watching that, and probably the goriest part of the entire movie that has made a lot of people leave the cinema.
Yeah, Green Room is awesome.
And I walked in, I opened the door, and I saw that on the screen, and that was horrible. But then I sat down and watched the rest of the movie because it was an amazing movie. And I think the only time you've seen me watch a horror movie apart from that was when we went to the movies with your lovely partner and my other sister, and we watched
10 Cloverfield Lane.
10 Cloverfield Lane. And
were you here that night we watched I'm Not a Serial Killer?
Yes, that was the same night. And I feel I was also reading the Wikipedia synopsis as we were watching that, so that was
right.
I got rid of all the jump scares, but something like 10 Cloverfield Lane.
I wouldn't even say there were. Yeah, 10 Cloverfield Lane is an exercise based in suspense.
It's yes.
And so yes, it is a horror movie to a degree, but it's dealing with very different kind of. It has very different goals.
Yes,
yeah?
They want you to feel full of tension, and I did, but I wasn't. I didn't not enjoy it from a tension point of view until the barrel of acid came out, and then I was hiding behind my fingers.
Yeah, sure. Because no one wants to watch someone melt in a barrel of acid.
Well, some people do.
Some people do, and we don't need to worry about those kind of people. Look, it's funny because I think we're actually kind of in similar boats. I kind of push through the bits that I hate, like that feeling that I hate, so that I can get to the stuff that I love.
Yes.
And I love the storytelling. I love the imagination in it. Like it's amazing some of the things that these people think of.
Like Scream. I love Scream, and that's a horror
Scream
movie.
is amazing, and Scream messed me up. So this is 1996. I was 14 years old. I was very impressionable. I was probably just on the age where I was allowed to get into that movie.
Yeah.
And it really kind of fucked me up because I don't think I'd ever really kind of put two and two together before that somebody I know could murder me.
And Alien as well. That's probably one of my favorite movies, and that would be a horror movie.
Yeah, it's definitely a horror movie, but I don't share that.
It's very my dislike is very specific, and I think it's very specific to that genre of like movies like Saw and Hostel and things like that. Where I'm not sure I'd ever be comfortable watching without a full Wikipedia printout next to me, so I know when to hide behind my hand.
Sure. Well, this is I'm in a position where, as for someone who I go on and on about how I love movies, and I just want to be able to know as much as I can about movies, and horror is this giant hole in my viewing.
Yes,
because I've watched I've watched more making of documentaries of horror movies than I've watched horror movies, I think, because instead of actually watching the movie, I will watch the making of on YouTube, because I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff,
especially real effects.
Yeah. Oh man, practical effects I absolutely adore. So this is an opportunity, obviously.
We'll talk about that a bit.
But this is obviously one of those movies that has always kind of been notorious.
Yes, for being terrifying, I think.
The character of Pinhead is not. He's probably not at the level of your Freddy or your Jasons, but he's close. Like he's definitely second tier. Like
on a completely different way. Like Freddy and Jason, they're people with masks. Pinhead's something completely different and scarier. I would think, because it's not human, but also human. It's very like if you didn't know anything about Freddy, Jason, or Pinhead, and you had the three of those just as faces, I think the most terrifying of the three of them would be Pinhead. Because there's something about the pins and the skin and the eyes, and it would cause more of a reaction than a mask.
Well, yeah, it's fine. I think the image of Pinhead is carries with it a certain kind of association. There's what I knew about this movie before watching it, just a couple of days ago, was that the idea of the Cenobites was that they feed on the idea of this pain v pleasure kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it basically takes the kind of dirty things that you have, so that kind of that the dark recesses of your own mind, they bring that out and they exploit it in you. Basically
they make it real.
And so for me that's beyond something like Freddy is very effective because you want to believe you're safe when you sleep. And so that idea, I think, is just one of the most effective ideas for a horror icon that I think has ever been, and that's why Freddy will live forever.
Sorry, I'm gonna own up. When you were saying Freddy, I was visualizing Mike Myers.
Okay, so Freddy, knives on his hands.
Yeah, so Freddy would probably be more scary than Pinhead, depending on how good the makeup is.
Well, I think, but Freddy is a joke now. Freddy sells McDonald's meals. Freddy is not a scary image anymore. No, I don't have him. I've got a couple of Fangorias up in the bookshelf. I thought I had one with a picture of him on it. But so whereas I think Pinhead still carries weight.
Which is very surprising.
Considering he has very little impact in this film.
He's not in the movie very long at all.
And with very little results, I think.
It doesn't take much for him to disappear from this movie.
No. I think... So in order to attack this movie, I think we want to talk about a couple of things. That the fact that for a movie that started this kind of icon, and has spawned 8 sequels or some ridiculous amount of terrible straight to DVD sequels, and a couple, like the first couple of sequels, which are apparently okay, yet provided was barely effectual in this first film at all.
Yeah, the movie goes for an hour and 32 minutes, and I'm pretty sure he's in it for 2 minutes.
I would say that's almost generous. But not only that, is that where this is a horror movie that feels very much like a
So when people say Hellraiser, and I had never seen Hellraiser before, I think this is going to be something as scary, as intense as A Nightmare on Elm Street, the first Jason movie,
Friday
the 13th. That's it. Halloween, one of those, and Scream even. But I would take Scream out of it because I find Scream so much more watchable. But one of those highly terrifying. Sorry.
That's it.
Sorry, highly terrifying, high quality, like full of giant scares, and has lasted long enough to generate so many sequels.
Yes.
And that's not really what I found.
Yes. Okay. So what we do end up getting is a very. I always knew that it was a very low budget, but then you look at Halloween. Halloween has an incredibly low budget, and Friday the 13th. These movies that did start these huge franchises. Generally, the first one is made on a low budget.
Saw.
The first Saw, yeah, absolutely. But we get a very low budget, a very kind of, it feels very isolated. It feels very self-contained.
Yes.
It's funny because, I mean, obviously, Clive Barker is British, but it even looks kind of British.
Yes.
Even though it's got, there's American people acting in it.
And it's so you don't know where it's set. Like, I mean, well, you do because they mentioned Brooklyn. It could be set in England.
It could. I mean, I think we're meant to assume that it is set in America, but it looks very British. It looks like an episode of British television. I find it kind of fascinating that this story that is kind of imaginative. I think I think the idea itself of the kind of the scorned. Oh no, not scorned. That's not right. Not the right word. The woman that found kind of like
emotional release.
Yeah, in this person who is an awful person.
Yeah,
and is now using that weakness that she has for him in order to kind of bring him food now that he needs to reform. I think there's definitely some meat in that, and we're dealing with issues that are kind of they're kind of intense, I think, and it's
just because you said food, I do have a note here. So she does bring him food. So we'll talk about the general plot of the movie. Is he has been taken to another dimension, but he escaped somehow. That's not explained.
It's not really explained, no.
He's brought back to life by some dripping blood, and to become human again, he must consume more blood.
Yes.
And she provides the blood by getting men.
So
this
is what's her name? It's a awful.
It's the only name I didn't write down.
They're all bad names too. Larry is the main guy. I'm like, come on.
And Frank is the villain.
Frank, like who? No one's called Frank anymore. Hey, it's your Uncle Frank. God, what's her name? Julia.
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 Don't look at me.
Don't look at me.
I did write a note down that's I drink blood with a straw. Because the first guy that you sort of see him consuming, you see a shot of I guess him being punctured by his fingers, and then she leaves the room, and you hear what I would call the sound of someone drinking out of a straw.
Yeah, it's look, and there's a certain amount of repetition to this kind of goings on. The movie on the whole, I think.
It's a great concept.
It's an excellent concept, and I'd be really interested to read the book. I've heard there's certain changes in the book, but generally it's pretty.
I would be
it's pretty close to what it is.
I'd be fascinated to see this movie done now. I guess in terms of effects, but with maybe $2 million.
Well, this is the thing though, because you got to think. Like, this is the idea of that whole kind of, I hate remaking things and I hate the idea of remakes, and I get that. I don't necessarily want to see this story told again. I would be interested in seeing someone who has the same level of imagination and creativity as Clive Barker maybe make a sequel to it or something like that, because we seem to be getting, and look, I haven't seen any of the sequels, so I don't want to shit on a film I've never seen, but from all accounts, all these sequels are just money grabbing kind of, let's just make a really cheap piece of shit movie and throw Pinhead in for 10 minutes and then suddenly we can sell it as a Hellraiser film.
So yeah, they changed. I did read a few of the sequels synopsis, and the understanding that the first sequel involves Kirsty as well. She's our heroine, and I think she's great.
I think she's great too.
She's so tough, and she's gorgeous. She's beautiful hair. She also just looks like a normal, not teenager. She's older than a teenager, but just a normal person.
True.
And
she's got some agency. She knows.
She's got spunk.
She does have spunk. I think.
She's also really tough.
She is tough. I think what happens. I think her kind of involvement in the plot is one of the bits that I think I was, in theory, most interested in, and then when it occurred, I realized that, oh no, that's really dumb. And that's when they come for her, because she apparently solved the box.
Yes.
Which, solving the box is a bit of an oxymoron.
Because you touch the box.
You touch the box.
And it opens.
You don't solve nothing. Like, she was looking at it and just went, oh, what does this do?
And the box was solved.
And it was like, is that all it takes?
So
and
it's called a puzzle box.
There's no puzzle.
I mean, there looked like a bit of puzzle to close the box. But to open the box, simple.
Super simple.
You touch the box.
I feel like there should be you should have to kind
touch the box.
touch the box. there should be some kind of like quest.
I want it to be like a Rubik's Cube.
Well, this is the thing. Like the whole idea of requesting the presence of the Cenobites is that you have tried every earthly means to get your jollies, and you have not found a violent enough alternative.
Yes.
So this is, so
the only way to do that is to go to
The only way
hell.
to do that is to like literally call on these weird priests of hell who will fuck you right up. It needs to be more difficult than with a box.
I touched the center of the box. It's open.
Like it should be a task. It should be like you don't just have to get the box. You have to go to like a mountain in Tibet and look at one wall that tells you one motion, and you turn it, and that's one step. And then you have to go.
Yep.
Like it seems really, and that seems like it's just an excuse so that she can have the box
very easily
very easily
have
open
the box and open it and meet the Cenobites.
And then they sit there and say, "You opened the box.
And she's
you
like,
solved the puzzle."
"What?
I'm like, I just touched it, man. I don't know what it is. I don't want, So,
and that whole scene as well. So I have some notes about that. So at this point, she's in hospital because she's just been attacked by her Uncle Frank. Before he's
come to daddy.
It's so weird. Before he's fully human, before he's got his skin on. So she's a bit bloody and she's a bit frazzled. She has the box and she sort of just collapses. And so one of the things I read about this before we get into that scene is the framing of people in this movie is very bizarre. So the way people pop into the frame. So she's having a nightmare at one point. She wakes up and her boyfriend just pops into frame, but too much of him. Too much of him to be just, I'm sitting up and now you can see me. It's almost like, let's just pop half your body into the
Clive
frame.
Barker had never directed a film before.
Yeah.
He's a writer and a visual
sense.
artist, but so he understands. I think he does the certain things that he does really well.
Yes.
Which we'll get to. But just one that I'm going to pick out of thin air is because it's also demonstrates the effectiveness of low budgets. The arrival of the Cenobites is signified by just the blue light coming through the shutters. So it feels you're in this room and then suddenly it feels like that room has become isolated.
Yes.
And that's really effective and cheap as shit. That's someone with a fucking lamp outside the thing. So that kind of stuff is clever. But yeah, his framing is off.
Yeah.
His timing.
Yes. The timing of the dialogue with the people when there's a conversation happening that needs another person to either arrive at a certain point or to feed onto a different line, it's not stilted, but it's
we're just attuned to a certain kind of movie making technique, and these are things that you develop over time. And a lot of first time filmmakers, you watch their films and something feels wrong, and it's usually just because they haven't had that experience to say, oh no, it's just. Instead of a weird kind of upward angle close up on that shot, we do an over shoulder, or we do, that kind of familiarity that comes with making movies for a while. But yeah,
because before she goes to the hospital, she collapses on the street, and three people sort of lean in over the top of her.
That shot's funny.
And I mean, it's a shot that you see whenever someone sort of passes out on a street in a movie. And I guess the only thing that he does, which is just a bit strange, is that there's so much of them that peer over.
Yes.
There's too much body for you
maybe
to be
too much body, yeah.
to be in that angle.
Because that moment where she was walking down the street and she passed out looked like a film clip for an
80s music video.
Yeah. But like not a good one though.
No.
But then again, there's other moments where he's excellent.
Yes.
The only thing I can think of is in regards to that kind of stuff is that I think, and this is something that I think the film does very well, it might not be necessarily scary. We've talked about the fact that I didn't feel scared watching this film. There's one kind of jump scare.
There is, and I did jump.
Oh, you did jump?
I did jump.
I didn't jump. I just kind of went, oh, that would have been effective.
And one of the things I've actually written down, there was another moment where he built up the tension so effectively. So this is when she's in the hospital room and the portal door opens and she starts walking through that. Sure. And the tension has built and he's got the environment is so effective that I was sort of got my fingers up to cover my face because I expected a jump scare.
Yeah, sure.
But then and then you get a practical effect, which is that weird
upside down
baby faced scorpion.
Sure, scorpion. It's got a scorpion tail. I'll pay scorpion. But this is while there's not necessarily flat out scares, he makes, and this could be part of what we're talking about with that why everything feels a little askew from a filmmaking perspective, is that maybe it's just to throw us off our balance.
Yeah.
Because you do feel unsettled, and I think that's probably the best way I can describe watching this film, is that there is a general sense of kind of unease and a little bit kind of gross.
Yes. And so,
And
but some
even
of it's
without
so
the violence.
smooth as well. Like, that I would agree with you because, like, you see some of the sections, like when she's getting them, not the first man, but the consequent men into the house.
Yes.
It's really quite smooth.
Yes.
And then there's some bits like the dinner party or when she's walking to the house for the first time, Kirsty, that are just kind of off-putting.
That just make you feel a little a little uneasy. And I think that's that. There are movies that have achieved that, I think, a lot better for me. But I agree that this I think is the movie's strongest point, is that we come away from it kind of feeling a little gross and being like, okay, ugh, that was a bit kind of, it gets under your skin.
Yeah.
Not to a degree that certain other, like, not to the extent that I think it wants. I think it wants to be, and maybe it did very much in 1987, but now it kind of, I think, kind of fizzles a little bit, and you just kind of go, oh, that was,
because I mean, at the end of this movie, you're in a position where you're like, does Uncle Frank want to get it on with his niece in her dad's body?
Yes, I think that's what's implied. Yes,
and that's
So
it does.
So Uncle Frank,
it's heading in that direction.
Uncle Frank is his character is, I feel like in the book, and I don't know for certain, they would do a better job kind of expressing the psychology of Frank.
Yes.
I don't think they do an exceptionally good idea getting across exactly what drove him to finding the box.
Yes.
What I found really strange was, and because it's a movie made in 1987 and there are certain things that you just can't do, is that it goes from like legit just missionary sex to like, I'm going to murder and eat people's skin. Like, you see some photos of him, and someone's wearing a mask or something, and it's kind of like, this isn't. I know what you're trying to express, but it's not there.
No.
Like, it doesn't seem like a natural progression to Cenobites ripping my skin off.
Yeah.
It seems like he skipped a lot of steps in between. You know what I mean? Especially with Julia, who, obviously this is probably part of it. Maybe as an actress, she didn't want to, like, it was like, oh, let's keep a lid on it, guys, a little bit, and that's, that's within everyone's right, of course. But it does kind of hurt the film because, she says something to him like,
I'll do anything.
Yeah, I'll do anything. And it's like, it's not enough. It's not enough. And I'm like, well, you had clothes on missionary sex. Like, for a guy that apparently is kind of, like really trying to push the boundaries, you got a ways to go. So it's, I think while a 1987 effectiveness, I think maybe a fair bit of this is lost in the now 30 years. And it's,
and I reckon sorry, no, I've lost my train of thought. Like it really comes across as maybe we couldn't have put that stuff in there because then we wouldn't be allowed to make this film because people might think it's a snuff film.
True. I get what you're saying, but it, the film has the reputation though.
Yeah, and that's what really surprised me when I was
sit
coming
down
into
and
this.
I'm like, all right, I'm about to fucking watch Hellraiser, man. Here we go.
I was a bit freaked out. I was
Here we go.
Ooh. And then within the first 5 minutes, I was giggling.
I giggled more than I thought I would.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there was a jump scare and I jumped.
Yeah, sure.
And you know what? It's a lot of that's the giggling. I guess it's some of it's dialogue and some of it's practical effects.
Look, I love practical effects. I absolutely love them. But
I reckon
sometimes they unfortunately lead me the wrong way. It's because I want to be engaged, and then I see something that is clearly like a Play-Doh kind of molded to be skin.
That's because I've watched this too late. So if I compare it to the only thing I can think of off the top of my head that reminds me of that's maybe Evil Dead 2.
Sure.
Army of Darkness? Is that
Army of Darkness is the third one.
Yeah. Sorry, Evil Dead 3. So the practical effects in that one, I mean, it's gone from like a super horror movie into something that's a little bit more ridiculous.
Well, Army of Darkness is designed to be way more fun.
Yeah. But because I watched that a lot younger.
Yeah, Army of Darkness was the first one I watched.
I didn't mind the practical effects at all. And then to watch this now, as opposed to maybe watching it when I was maybe 15 or something, I'm not saying that they would have been scary, but I wouldn't have been as distracted by them. Yeah,
I get what you're saying. I think this movie contains the both examples. Though,
yes.
Because the rebirth of Frank is, I think, fucking incredible. Yeah. Like, I was just, it blew my mind when I was watching that. It was, the fact that we watched that for like 2 minutes. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but in like legit no cutaway.
Like
just
brain
here we
reforming.
are. That's it. The bit where his fucking arms just
like
his leg arms
like,
just kind of pop out of the ground and then
his neck
that's it. His neck attaches to the brain.
I was just like, what part is that? And then there's goo everywhere.
But it was so good. Like it was amazing. And then then we get Upside Down Scorpion, and it's kind of like.
But then you also get then he's not called Pinhead in this movie.
No.
He's male Cenobite. So male Cenobite and female Cenobite. So the female Cenobite's the one that has her neck ripped open.
Yes.
They are super effective.
Yeah, and there's not a lot to them.
Actually, sorry, so is Chatterbox.
Chatterbox, yeah.
The only one that's not really effective is the Slug.
Is that what his name is?
I don't know what it was called. No, Butterball.
Butterball.
I did see that in the credits. Butterball Cenobite.
That's great.
But Chatterbox,
I just
female
don't
and
understand
male,
why he's wearing sunglasses. I don't get it. Why?
He didn't have eyes. They were sewed shut. In the very brief glimpse you get when he takes his eyes out. Oh, sorry, takes his eyes out. I couldn't see, but it either looked like...
So he's self-conscious?
I don't know.
But why isn't the one with the neck thing like wearing like a scarf then?
But it was either like they were mouths where his eyes were like teeth, or they were sewn. I couldn't see because it's very, very quick and it was a bit pixelated.
Yes.
So
what about Chatterbox? Like the Chatterbox one, I think Chatterbox is the worst. Is the best designed one. Like as far as like ness goes. He's pretty rough to watch, but
the female Cenobite I thought was very effective in the sense more than Pinhead, because you can see that she's dissected herself and she has it open, because I mean the whole thing about these creatures is that they want to feel pain for pleasure. So
you reckon someone's doing something with that hole in her neck?
No, but it's more that the nerves are. I guess it's more like the nerves are exposed and her skin is pinned back permanently because she wants to feel.
Okay. Yeah, I get you.
Same with Pinhead, like pins in your face, not for any other reason except to feel the pins in your head, and that's where Chatterbox and Butterball don't really work because
don't really abide by those rules. Well, I'd say I never really thought of it that way as Pinhead. It's the fact that he's like it's maybe he was once somebody that also.
I think that's what the third movie is about. But yeah, so it's the way I look at them is especially those two. It's that's what they're for. They want people to feel pleasure from pain. Yeah. So it makes sense that they're existing in a permanent state of pain.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. No, I'm with you there.
I'm not sure, but they're super, super effective practical effects for the three. Butterball, I mean, it looks alright.
Just, the makeup was incredible, and you can see from you look at Doug Bradley in that getup, and you understand why it's become an iconic figure. Yes, because it's such a striking visual. Yeah,
and that's straight from the book before the movie. I think the cover of the book before the movie came out.
Oh, okay, right, cool.
That could be a lie.
All right, sure. I assume I mean, he wrote the book himself, so I assume he's taken the image as how he saw it, so it's probably pretty clear description from the book.
And it's that would probably be the worst part, I guess, about being an author and trying to show what you see in your head on screen, like to actually make something that you can see in your head.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of responsibility. I feel like if somebody else is directing something you wrote and it doesn't work out, you've always got someone to blame. Yes, I think it would be very hard to know that you're the person that couldn't translate your own work effectively, which is probably so. Like I said, the practical effects. I guess you've got some amazing examples and some that aren't great. And it makes sense to me that that's sort of more of an important draw to this movie than maybe the dialogue or the acting. I think the physical expression. I don't think this is particularly well acted, but at the same time, I don't think it was a priority. No, and I also think to a degree it was maybe deliberately heightened in order to, like I said, achieve that sense of off-puttingness. The guy playing Larry, while I'm not, super well versed with what he's done, where is he? Yeah, Andrew Robinson, is incredibly effective as the main serial killer in the first Dirty Harry film. And I remember, when I watched that, I remember one of the biggest takeaways I had from that film was, God, that guy was like for a villain, was up there as one of the most engaging, terrifying real villains that I've seen. And yet in this, I don't know what he's doing. It's this weird kind of like it's like so soap opera dad. Yes, it's like Neighbours, but when but you know what, when on their off week, when it's Frank wearing Larry's skin. Oh, you can so much more effective. You can see that he's obviously he's like been let loose. Yeah. I just so I think that's why I have to kind of assume that this is maybe that it was a deliberate choice to kind of try and really just amp up the unrealistic nature of everyone's relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because even the way, like, what's the girl, Kirsty?
Kirsty.
Even her relationship with them doesn't seem like...
Doesn't seem like a real relationship.
Yeah. I like that they never really fully, we're just meant to assume that she's a bit distant after her mum passed away, but she's got a weird energy with her dad. She's got very weird energy with Julia, even before Julia is fucking killing people. Like, you can see that there's a really weird energy there.
And she's very much just like, Dad, just back off a bit, Dad. I'm doing my own thing. And,
exactly.
And he's like, oh.
but that phone conversation is just some hideously bad dialogue and performed horribly. But it gets a point across, I guess, and it does. Because
when Kirsty at the end of this movie compared to Kirsty at the start of this movie, I mean, it couldn't be more different. I don't think. Like it's not saying that her character arcs in a certain way. It's just the intensity of the performance kicks up a notch.
She does, and she's forced to do a lot of the heavy lifting with the screaming and the running and the yelling and the exhausted and the and that's I can't imagine how tough that would be for so many of these young actresses of that era who were basically, you want to get work, well, we're making a slasher film, you can be the girl that runs around screaming the whole time. So tough gig, man.
It would be hard work,
and I think she sells it pretty well.
She does.
It's a hard gig and she does pretty well. One thing I really like about it, she's the way she says "oh shit" sometimes reminds me, it's really great. It reminds me of like if you turned around and you saw like
a big spider?
Maybe not even a big spider, like something that's kind of like a giant beach ball.
Oh, yep.
And you're like, oh shit. She just says it in this really strange way. Like it's like the one thing that I find really strange about
I have to deal with this now.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not scared of it, but damn, I don't want to have to deal with it.
That's what it is. It's this. She very quickly just accepts her surroundings.
Yes.
When you see a lot of these, and there's an element to the fear where it's just like, what the fuck? She's really quickly on board with like...
Yep. She's like, okay, I'm going to go to hell if I don't do this.
Shit. Fuck. All right. And she turns around to the thing. She's like, oh, fuck. All right. I'm running.
Are you talking about the very end?
She says it a couple of times.
Back together. So one of my very favorite things that I had to write down was... So she has a random boyfriend that is in all of maybe 2 minutes of this movie as well. And he's wearing a fantastic shirt at the end of this. But he breaks into the house as she's sort of fighting off the Cenobites and he tries to rescue her by picking up the box and trying to... So the box has been knocked out of their hands. They're fighting the scorpion baby, upside down scorpion baby. And she finally picks up the box and he reaches to do it for her. And she's like, fuck off. And then does it and then kills the last Cenobite. Yeah, and it's just fantastic because it's sort of just like, this is my shit to deal with. You got here 30 seconds ago.
Yeah. Don't fucking claim victory of this bullshit. I've been handling all kinds of shit.
Like, now I have to look after you because you're in this house as well and things are falling down. Like, he literally walked in the door and she had to save him from Butterball.
Exactly. Well, that's what, yeah. I don't know why he's in this film, that boyfriend. He's a wasted character. And I think by having him there, it makes... horror movies... You're always more scared for the protagonist when they're on their own.
Yes.
As soon as you couple them with anybody, male or female, there is suddenly... a little bit of a relief to that tension, and this didn't need it at all. I think the idea of her being alone in that house is so much more effective than some random boyfriend who's been in fucking 30 seconds of this movie to show up and be all like, "Hey, Julie," well, what's her name?
Kirsty.
Hey, Kirsty. Yeah. Whoa, what's going on?
I hope it's Kirsty, not Christy.
Oh, shall we look it up? Oh no, she'll be so disappointed in us.
So I completely agree with you. And one of the things,
it's Kirsty.
Yeah, great. So one of my favorite things about Julia as a character is how she's depicted very quickly as I am an evil villain.
Because of her hair and power suit?
Yeah, so the very first thing that she does that I'm just a little bit like, what? Is she's smoking a cigarette inside the house and then she just drops it and stubs it out in the hallway of the house inside.
This brand new house that they're just about to
moving into. And I'm just like, okay, so...
She doesn't do a good job at hiding the fact that she's not into Larry either. No. Like, I know that they've obviously, they're dealing with kind of relationship issues, but for me, it's just kind of like, I think why she's even there is kind of questionable. Like, the only thing I can think of is that she legitimately has put on this ruse the whole time And as soon as he mentioned maybe going to live in this house where Frank was living,
Might be, yeah.
that she's been all like, oh, no, let's not do that. Secretly, I want to do that.
Yes.
And that's the only thing I can think of. But who knows how long she's had to keep up that charade on the off chance that she might run into this guy she shagged once. Or like,
Because you don't get any timeline in this movie. Like, she's so...
No, but what's weird is that when Frank rolls up at her door, she seems really normal.
Yes. It's like he made her evil because he likes evil sex. Not evil
Apparently
sex. That's the worst.
That's
the worst thing to say. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing whatever you like as long as everyone is consenting.
I think if Cenobites are involved, we can safely say that we're branching out into evil sex. But
she takes the difference between her makeup, I guess, hair and makeup when she's normal Julia before she has sex with Frank,
any is also part
and
of
her
it.
hair is longer and it's down and it's softer, and then she literally turns into I'm thinking like sort of like the witch from Red Sonja with like the intense eyebrows and the high hair and the makeup. So the heavy blended sort of 80s eye makeup.
She reminds me of Bridget Nielsen in Rocky IV. Like she's how 80s culture presented women of power.
Yes.
It was like really defined looks,
hard edges.
High hair, bouffant hair.
And her hair got harder and higher the more people she killed.
That's what she was feeding off. It was part of it.
Hair was just
he gets
bigger.
the blood. She just uses shit in her hair.
Oh, man.
Yeah, she's it's an interesting performance. I think generally a lot of these characters I'm a bit kind of like, meh, okay. Like I find some interest in it, and sometimes I think, oh, that's kind of a cool idea, but then it doesn't always. And this is what we were kind of talking about this before, but a lot of it is stuff that I think I'm gonna like, and then when I get to it, I don't like it. For instance, the idea, because it popped up in my head when she was when the Cenobites arrived to her, and she mentioned the thing about Frank.
Yes.
And in my head, I'm like, oh, she's going to cut a deal. This is crazy.
Yes, because that's what I thought would happen as well.
And then I'm like, oh, no, that's awful. Like, what an awful idea.
Yeah. You're making your protagonist...
Well, you're making they're not really the antagonist. Frank's the antagonist. But you're making what are meant to be the most evilest things in the world susceptible to a girl's kind of bargaining. And
you know what's interesting? And I'm not sure if they've just written this in the synopsis for the movie badly, or if I've read the synopsis of the book, is that the way I understood it before I came to watch it was that it was a deal that was cut because the Cenobites are angry that someone escaped them.
Yes.
But you don't get that at all.
Well, no, I mean, that's... I kind of got that.
But did you get that because you already knew that?
Maybe. I don't know.
See,
what I found really weird is the way that they approach that conversation, because she has to, like, tell them that he's gone.
Why don't they know?
But this is what I reckon, like, this is what I mean. Like, shouldn't it be that they arrive and she says, I know where Frank is, and they're like, we know who Frank is. We're going to go fucking get him.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like, Frank from Brooklyn? No, he's torturing him at the moment.
Yeah,
no, he's not. He's with me. What? It's this weird kind of like, what power? You take away power from them by them not knowing, by them, having to kind of go, okay, maybe we'll listen to you.
And it kind of glosses over the fact, like, how did he escape to begin with?
Well,
like, does all it take is some blood in the room that you were...
I think it might have just been a bit of it was just a concoction that luckily he was able to exploit.
Yeah.
But what I want to know, so that means that there's not just the 4 of those Cenobites, and Scorpion, upside down Scorpion baby. So who was looking after Frank? Who's looking after these people? Like, because then that means that they're physically... They
have to be there.
They have to be there to be aware. Exactly.
Yeah. Otherwise, they can all fuck off.
You lose a bit of power there.
Yeah.
So the idea of it, I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, no. And then I thought about it more and just went, oh, no, that kind of tears away so much power in Pinhead.
And I guess the way that they address that in the second movie is, so she has to go into their dimension and find her father.
Sure.
And it's like
apparently she can just fucking throw a rock so that they hear a noise and she can go into the room and take him away.
And and she just like it's like a labyrinth, and there's different bits in the labyrinth where people are being tortured in different ways, and they don't necessarily have to be there.
I feel like that's gonna look. I actually want,
but that's probably something that, like, these are things that I think they fix maybe in the first couple of sequels before it went a little bit off the rails. And this is one of the things that I've mentioned to you before. So Hellraiser sequels is what happens to a lot of good horror movie franchises where, especially ones that are based off a book, where you want to keep the rights. So you need to keep making movies.
Yeah.
So if they don't make Hellraiser movies, then they lose the rights to make Hellraiser movies. So you get the first movie, which is an interesting movie, not scary, creates some really interesting characters, and is an interesting effort from someone who's never directed before. Then you get a couple of sequels where someone's like, they're really good. I'll take those and put them in something that we spend a bit more money on.
Yeah.
And then like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many more, and it just becomes like,
it's a joke. I think more often than not, what we'd get now from these films is basically, we're at a club, or we're at some secluded location, and there's somebody there that finds a puzzle box underneath a fucking couch.
A Cabin in the Woods.
Kind of, yeah.
Not that movie,
but
like,
essentially,
that's a great movie. But like the whole,
they go downstairs into the basement.
Someone reads a thing that you're like, why would you? Okay, so
and Pinhead turns up and Cenobites, and then suddenly, it's just about how we can torture some people. And I'm not interested in that. That's not what I'm here to see. I'm here to see far more elaborate storytelling, which I think this attempted and sometimes worked.
Yes.
But
one thing I wanted to mention about Julia is that she's apparently strong enough to lift a body and carry it fairly long. Did you notice that? The very first man that she's brought up to be killed, and her husband gets home, and she picks him up and carries the body into the next room. I know it's been drained of blood and things, but I was just like, she picks it up and like,
yeah, well, in
her heels, and
human bodies are fucking heavy, man.
Yeah.
It's like 80 kilos at least.
And one of the other things, so that I guess I praise Kirsty in her intensity for hiding this against people who probably might not have picked it up if they were really into what was happening, but she has to run into places that you wouldn't run into, but she has to run into them, I guess, for the plot.
Yeah.
Like that room, like the room where everything goes down, and to get away from Frank the first time, she, instead of running downstairs out of the house, she runs into the attic.
Yes.
And traps herself. And the way she has to do that means she has to run around him, like past him, into the room, rather than turning and going down the stairs. And I was just like, okay.
Kirsty. There are multiple opportunities where I was like, well, just don't be where you are right now.
Yeah.
Like,
as
soon as she saw Julia with that other dude coming into the house, and then her giving the clearly the most obvious, I'm just making sure no one's watching, look, before going inside, that is the moment you get the fuck out of there and you call your dad.
Or, like, if you do hang around and you hear him cry out for help, you call the police.
Crying out in pain. Like, there were a couple of moments like that. I think there's very, and this is all might just be part of the trying to push us off guard and make us feel a little unsettled, but there's a lot of opportunities for people to behave like human beings when they don't.
Yes. Like the doctor. So that's the thing I wanted to talk about.
Why is the doctor so fucking weird?
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about in the hospital room, which is she's locked in a hospital room, which makes no sense. And they do say, the police want to talk to you. But that doesn't mean you lock her in the room.
Why the police want to talk to her?
Because she was covered in blood, I guess, and she collapsed on the street.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Who knows? But like, I wrote down weird doctor plot device, and he's like, I'm here to lock you in your room.
There's that. She was dreaming
and give you the box.
She was dreaming of that. Oh yeah. Oh, you had this on you.
You had this. You were very.
Yeah.
You didn't
the police want to talk to you, but you can have
pocket.
this. Yeah. It's not like the police want to maybe look at anyway.
But maybe he also looked a bit weird, and
it must have been a deliberate choice.
That's what
Otherwise,
I'm
he was
thinking.
just an awful actor, and he couldn't speak like a human being.
Yes.
But but she was dreaming of that flower opening, and then that was on the television screen, and the nurse was watching it. Yeah.
So I have flower written down as well.
And so for as imagery, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of it's one of those images that makes you go, is that meant to be sexual? I think it's meant to be sexual, but it's kind of not sexual, and so you kind of go, am I just seeing that as being sexual? But
because it happens in a very strange spot
of the movie.
Yeah, in the sense that it all of a sudden she blacks out and then there's a flower.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But what I found really interesting is that it turns out it's on the television screen and there's a nurse watching that. And I'm like, is that the whole show? Is that a show?
Is that a show? The flower show?
The flower unpeeling on itself
David
show?
Attenborough presents Flowers Blooming.
Because who knows how long she's been out for, and that nurse is just sitting there watching that show.
So she can lock her in the room.
Oh, it's just that kind of stuff, which I think maybe is making cool imagery for the sake of cool imagery without considering its real world implications.
Exactly, yes.
Because
I did want to have that...
sorry to interrupt really quickly. But like the way Julia is like, don't go in the room, and I'm like, I'm sorry, if that was a woman that I was living with who we were on kind of off, clearly at the end of our kind of run, and she was acting suspicious as fuck.
Yep.
I wouldn't just be like, it's okay, darling, I'm just gonna go. Like, I'd be like, I'm gonna go up in that room.
And then then she tries to distract him by getting it on a little bit, and they go into the bedroom, and there's a good portion of time when she's like, please stop, and he doesn't stop, and it's a bit strange.
And then he does, I don't know what's wrong with you.
Why don't you like me? And it's like,
were you not listening? And that was, like, Frank slowly walking up and just peeling a rat is a kind of like I of all the moments in the film that kind of put me off and made me go, oh, that might have been the one. I think that, and when he's just nailing rats to the wall for no reason.
Yes, and the maggots. When she hits the body and
I mean,
it wasn't
I'm usually fine with maggots. I don't know why. I don't really care. But it's another thing where I consider it and go, what? What the fuck? What are you doing?
So
what is that? What is the purpose of that?
So another thing on that, I guess, and this is in terms of like imagery that you want to have in a movie that just isn't what a normal person would do. So when she's running from the upside down scorpion baby, she keeps on doing 360s. And I'm like, it doesn't matter how bad the practical effects are. If you see an upside down scorpion baby and you have to run from it, you're fucking running.
You're
like,
running.
I'm running the fuck back to my hospital room that I'm locked in. I'm not doing about 360s just to make sure that it's still chasing me.
It's still chasing me?
It's still chasing me.
Yeah, it's still.
So I might just stroll out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
This portal that I walked into. Why would you walk into a portal?
Well, I mean, if that accidentally opened up and I was like...
I'd be out of the house.
That's it. If the walls tore open and I saw a hallway that led to like a mystical land, I'd at least go get some people to come with me.
You know what? It's like the poltergeist. Like, why would they stay one more night in that house after they'd just got Carol Ann back?
Because movie.
Because I know.
Because their movie doesn't happen.
I know, but it's just like it's.
But then the really good horror movies consider this though. Consider the implications of this stuff and say, no, do you know what? We're not going to make her run aimlessly up the stairs when she's right next to the front door. We're going to go out the front door. Yeah. No, we're not going to not have her call the cops because that would be ridiculous. She's going to call the cops, but we're going to figure out a way to deal with that in a storytelling sense.
So I was going to mention this before, but probably the scariest movie I think I've ever seen that's really stuck with me is a movie called The Descent. And that's the perfect sort of movie where I mean the plot is I guess you could call it a B grade horror because they're in a cave and they get trapped in a cave, but they want a situation where these people are completely isolated and can't call for help and can't contact emergency services and can't regroup and things like that. They're trapped and they're cut off. And it's so much like that's super effective, rather than just deciding that for some reason your heroine or hero is not going to call the police because you don't feel like they should. Like make it so that they can't.
Every movie in the fucking last, I'm sure there's supercuts on YouTube of people looking at their phone and it's saying no service in a horror movie so that they can deal with that problem. But it doesn't have to just specifically be that. I mean, there are so many other ways to deal with this kind of stuff, and I think the best films understand that certain things in life in the real world are always going to occur and are always going to be a thought process of somebody. How do we deal with that in a logical way? And I don't know if this movie did it all the way through. But then again, this is not,
It's so hard.
I give this movie props because I think it's just designed to be like a nightmare in a sense. It's kind of lack of logic. It's
that's the best way to describe it, actually. Like if you try and remember a nightmare after, well, not that you'd want to remember a nightmare, but when you try to remember a dream after you wake up, it's disjointed in that sort of a way.
Yeah, exactly. There's all those rules from Inception.
And you wonder if that's what was Clive Barker's intention.
Maybe. Look, and quite possibly, and maybe we should, give it more credit for that. But at the same time, for what is one of the all-time classic horror movies, I wasn't really scared. And I think, which is hypocritical of me to say because it's my least favorite part of horror movies, but I think there is a level of effectiveness that comes from, even though I don't like being scared, knowing that I am scared. Yep. And it's not just I'm afraid of a jump scare. It's that I'm literally
feeling the
adrenaline.
That's the word.
Yeah. And this was not that. I'm not saying that every horror movie has to be an adrenaline fest because that's unfair.
But you want a horror movie to put you into flight or fright.
Yeah.
I can't say it, flight or fight mode.
I
which
would
is
agree with that.
adrenaline,
That's
like,
probably
that's-
part of it, yeah.
So, I mean, a horror movie is about making you uncomfortable and scaring you and creating tension and suspense and things like that. And all of that, I guess, is related to your physical response to things that unnerve you, which is you're going to run away from it or you're going to fight it. And the horror movies that I remember the most are the ones that the first time I watched that, like, that's all that was happening to me. Heart rate up, lots of adrenaline pumping, and The Descent's a great example of that. Like I said, it's a when we got it, we knew exactly what the movie was going to be, but that didn't make it any less terrifying.
No, and that's a big part of it too. I think my expectations were high, unfortunately.
Because I thought the reason this film had such a reputation was because it was truly terrifying. And when you asked me to come on and do Hellraiser, I went from being like, yeah, I'll do the podcast.
Yeah. But having said that, maybe it was different. Maybe it was different in the 80s. Maybe it's my fault for putting too much of a heavy expectation on it. It must have been effective to some people because we've had so many, sequels and things, and maybe in the right environment, it would be a very different experience.
But someone who is creative enough to come up with what the Cenobites look like, I completely understand why other people would see this movie and want to take that specific part out and build something around that, because it's very effective.
Yes, and I think it's done enough for me to want to perhaps watch the second or third one.
And I think they are remaking it.
Really?
I think. Aren't they? I don't know. And when I Googled it before, the imagery that popped
I feel
up.
like it's been something that they've been trying to get off the ground for a very long time. And whether or not that is ever going to happen or not is yet to be decided. Anyway, maybe that's enough.
Yeah,
is that enough?
I can't think of anything else
That's all I got.
I wanted to say, except, go Kirsty at the very end when she's like, I'll fix the fucking puzzle box. Just leave me alone.
Oh, I really
stupid
liked the
boyfriend."
rotoscoping effect. I like to see rotoscoping when they draw on the film. And so all the yellow lines and everything.
Yes, and I also love.
I dig it. It reminds me of my youth.
Yes, I love that stuff. It reminds me of the ghosts in Ghost, the hell ghosts.
Oh, yeah. Those things
guys.
are awesome. Love it.
And the very last note I wrote was random burning chair, where they go to the field of fire pits.
At the end?
At the very end?
Yeah.
One of the fire pits is just a chair on fire.
Awesome.
And I was just like, okay.
Yeah, what's that location? Is that just...
That's just the field that's on fire.
Yeah, let's just go to the fire pits.
Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, and we'll burn it there, and then a
You
weird
got
homeless
something you
man,
need to get rid of?
weird bug-eating homeless man will come up and grab the box and turn into a dragon.
Yeah. That's how I want every movie that I ever watch from now on to end. I want it to be like at the end of a romantic comedy, the weird bug-eating man
It just
comes
appears.
up and turns into a dragon.
Yeah.
And then we all go home.
Yes.
Very good. Well, that was Hellraiser 1987's Hellraiser for our first week of our Spook-isodes. We've got to do some stream crossing. Nicole, do you want to try singing the song?
Oh, God. Okay. You can cut this out, though, if it's really
No,
bad.
go for it.
Okay. Crossing the streams!
Yeah, nice.
I can't go as high as Nick. That was like...
Nick's madness. I don't understand how he does
Can
it.
you do it now? Because I did it.
Crossing the streams!
It's so much more in tune when you do it.
It's any note works. I'm not picky about the note you choose. Have you got yours sorted?
So I
Should I go
did
first?
have one. No, I did have one. I haven't looked at anything new because when I did arrive here, I had one, but then Tyson informed me that it had to be horror movie related.
It's all scary movies for our October Spook-isodes.
And so, because I didn't have one prepared, I'm going to go back to something that I think everyone should be revisiting in the next couple of weeks because Stranger Things 2 comes out.
Very good.
On October 27th, I think.
Yes.
So if you haven't watched, I think maybe
so
you
you've
guys
seen
have
Stranger
spoken.
Things?
I have watched it, and I watched it by myself. Not the second time. The second time I watched it by myself. The
Sure.
first time I didn't watch it by
Okay,
myself.
fair enough.
That's horror. There are some scary
There
moments.
are some definitely horrific moments in that show. I remember the episode where it seemed like the whole episode was going to be, what's her name?
Winona?
Is that the daughter?
No.
Not Winona Ryder. What's the daughter's name with the neck? The skinny neck, and she wears the turtleneck sweaters.
Oh, I can't remember.
She's got...
Yeah.
yeah, you know the one.
Barb's friend.
Yeah.
Friend of Barb.
No, it should be the other way around. It seemed like they were setting up for an entire
Was
episode.
her name Julia too?
Maybe.
Oh.
That would be interesting. They were setting it up as her versus the other side demon
Yes.
when she went through the tree trunk. And but even before that, I was watching that episode. The idea of having to contend with that for 45 minutes was making Nancy. That's it. Was making me feel like, giving me like, palpitations.
Yes.
Turned out to be not that, and I was actually disappointed because I was like, well, that would have been a great fucking episode, didn't you?
But just the whole series, it was the perfect number of episodes, if not enough. Like I
agree.
I enjoyed it so thoroughly.
It's one of the first times I've watched one of these kind of Netflix shows, or where it's been like, I could have done a few more episodes.
Winona Ryder as Joyce is like
killer
one
performance.
of the best things I've seen her in recently, and just completely
she got a
nailing.
Tough gig. People didn't like her, and I fucking loved her.
But she completely nailed what a mother would react if like her son disappeared, and then that shit started happening in your house.
I said this to some people, and they made me think that she might be crazy, but it reminded me of my mother. and people were like, your mum must be weird. I'm like, no, not the full bonkers part of it. Just every now and then she would react a certain way, and I was like, I've seen that exact reaction before in my mother.
And then I loved Jim Hopper, who was the sheriff.
Yes, soon to be Hellboy in the Hellboy remake.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, David Harbour.
And then all the kids. The kids were like, I'm not a fan of a lot of like kids if they're not good.
These kids are great.
And they're so good. Because I watched Super 8 pretty close to before I watched this series.
Sure.
And it's the same sort of thing. Like the kids are great. The story's great. If you haven't watched it and you love horror, what are you doing? Get Netflix and just watch this specifically.
I feel like most people have watched it.
Yeah.
And
the music is amazing.
Yeah. I think for
8 episodes.
I know for a lot of people, maybe
I
8
think
or 10.
it's not long.
Yeah. I think I know a lot of people's kind of criticism of it is that it was all nostalgia, no actual content.
I think it's a load of crock.
Look, I can see where people are coming from with that, but I don't have that same problem.
No.
I think there is a cynicism that you can kind of...
You can't set something in the 80s anymore because it's too...
Yeah.
And
look,
and I get that.
It wears its influences proudly on its sleeves, but it's not like it's doing it and trying to slip it past you.
No, because you could set this story now.
Yeah,
I don't think it would be just as effective.
It's been chosen to be its form of delivery.
Yeah.
It is a fantasy horror tale told through the lens of 80s nostalgia. And I think, if that format and the way that it's been told to you is not to your liking, that is fine, but I think it's unfair to kind of say that it's not an effective show because of that. I found it to be incredibly
and it's
effective.
so rewatchable as well. So
I haven't rewatched it yet.
I've watched the series through twice.
I'll prepare for the new
It's well
series.
up there.
Very good.
End of October, Stranger Things 2.
Excellent. Halloween's going to be busy. There's lots of cool stuff to watch. That's
Netflix, by the way.
On Netflix, very good. I'm going to very quickly. This might have been one that I feel like maybe we've already done before, but that's what you get. I'm going to recommend the film It Follows, which is on Netflix, and I also believe it's on SBS On Demand because they just had it on SBS the other night. It Follows. Have you heard of this one, Nick?
I have heard it described as a horror movie STD.
Sure. That's essentially what it is. It's a big giant metaphor for STDs and sexual promiscuity and things like that. I think it's...
But people, apparently it's a very intelligent...
It is. It's a very
movie.
intelligent horror movie, and I think that just saying that it is the STD horror movie is kind of selling it a little short.
It's like saying Stranger Things is bad because it's nostalgic.
Exactly. It's very deliberately paced. It's very moody. It sets an incredible tone. While logically, I think sometimes it doesn't entirely hold up. If you decide you want to have that conversation about it, it will fall to pieces. But that's kind of not the point. It has some of the most effective jump scares, or not even jump scares. You can't call them jump scares. Legitimate scares, because they don't jump at you. They just appear almost in slow motion sometimes, but they are just bone chilling, some of these moments in it.
Because the idea of something following you that you can't, I guess you can't see and you can't get rid of is truly terrifying.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of scenes in this film where you spend as much time examining the background of frames as you do interacting, like taking in the main interaction, because you know that any of these people could be the it, and you're just checking to see which direction they're walking in. Are they following them? Are they heading towards us? And, more than once in the film, if you're not, you're watching a casual conversation, and then suddenly you realize that someone who was in the back of the frame is now about to be at the front of the frame.
Oh, that would be terrifying.
And that is super effective. Really, really great. Her name, Maker Munro, who's gone on to do some other stuff now. She was in Independence Day Resurrection and stuff like that. It gives a really great performance, really understated. It's also kind of cool because it doesn't really clearly indicate a time. It feels 80s, but people have mobile phones, but the cars all look old. And it's...
See, that's so much better than trying to set it in modern... Because technology dates films so quickly now.
Yeah.
And it's out of control, and it's almost better just to mix it up so that you can't put your movie in a time frame.
Exactly.
So that it will then be dated if you want to watch it 5 years from now, because everyone's got different phones.
100%.
So it kind of reminds me of I read it's I guess technically a horror book, and there's witch creatures in it, and there's a story where this one particular creature, it follows you, and it can't appear unless you look over your shoulder 3 times. But while you're walking, you can hear a third footstep for every 2 steps that you take. And so you check over your shoulder and then don't see anything, so you keep walking. You still hear the extra footsteps, so you look again, still don't see anything. And then you hear them closer and louder, and you look one more time, and then the monster can appear and eat you.
That's terrifying. Why did you tell me that story for? That's awful. Thank you so much. That's how we should end all our Spook-isodes, I think. I'm going to tell Nick we're going to prepare a little scary story at the end of our episodes. That's going to wrap us up, Nick. Thank you so much for joining us
You're
today.
very welcome.
I hope you enjoyed your time here discussing HELLRAISER.
Well, it definitely got easier as we went along.
Of course it did. Next week, we've got very exciting news. So as everyone knows, our episodes of Nick, Tys and Videotape will end on a Friday. Next week, we happen to have a very exciting date. It is Friday the 13th in October.
So exciting.
So exciting. And, well, to celebrate this momentous occasion, what else could we possibly do but talk about...
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Well done. Very well done. We will be talking about the original Friday the 13th. So... Sans Jason, which is a little bit disappointing. I was in my head, I was like, oh, should we do the third one? Because I want a Jason. But no, we've got to do the first one because it's the classic. It's one of the very first slashers. It's not the first, but it is one of the first. 1980s Friday the 13th, directed by Sean Cunningham. We will be discussing that next Friday, on Friday the 13th.
With Nick.
With original Nick, not this Nick.
Not this Nick.
But thank you again for joining us, Nicole.
No worries.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.